Right, so picture this, Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, I know we're not American, but my mother insists on celebrating it every year like she's been possessed by a Midwestern housewife with a Pinterest account. Something about gratitude and family traditions, which is rich coming from a woman who once tried to disown me because I got a second piercing. Anyway, there we are, sat round the table like some Poundland version of Downton Abbey, if everyone worked in retail and passive-aggressively hated each other. The turkey's overcooked, the gravy tastes like regret, and Aunt Linda, 3 glasses of Echo Falls deep, is loudly accusing the stuffing of being too dry. Again, Sandra. As if that's the biggest tragedy of the evening. And then it happens. Gregory. My brother. Golden boy Greg. The favorite child, the pride of the family, the one who got AB in GCSE business and thinks he's Alan Sugar. He stands up. Actually stands up. Like we're all on the set of EastEnders, and he's about to deliver the duff moment before the credits roll. He clears his throat, theatrically, might I add, taps his knife on the glass like he's proposing a toast, and says, with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, "My little sister is nothing but a disappointment to this family." Now, to be fair, I was mid-chew. So any reaction was delayed by the fact that I had a forkful of Aunt Linda's aggressively beige cauliflower cheese halfway to my mouth. But even if I hadn't been chewing, I probably still would have just blinked. Because I'm used to this nonsense. This family treats emotional damage like it's a team sport. Greg pauses, clearly proud of himself, like he's just said something profound and not, wildly melodramatic. She'll never be welcome in my home. Oh. Cheers, Greg. What a loss. Truly heartbroken, I won't be invited to your 2-bed new build in a cul-de-sac in Slough. Now, everyone else at the table reacts like he's just slapped the queen. Mum gasps dramatically, clutches her wine glass like it's a life preserver. Dad makes that weird throat-clearing noise men over 50 make when they're uncomfortable but too emotionally stunted to speak. Even the dog looks awkward, which is impressive considering he's mostly concerned with the pigs and blankets. Me? I just blink again. Maybe raise an eyebrow. Consider clapping, but again, still mid-bite. And honestly, I wasn't that surprised. Greg's always had the emotional range of a wet sock and the dramatic flair of a GCSE drama student who thinks wearing all black makes them deep. You'd think someone just found out I'd committed arson or married into the Conservative Party. But no, my actual crime? Not living up to Greg's idea of what a respectable woman should be. Which, coming from a man who once got banned from Ladbrokes for excessive shouting, is frankly hilarious. What makes it even better, what really adds that extra sprinkle of tragic irony, is that Greg had no idea what I actually did for a living. No clue. To him, I was still the teenage screw-up who dropped out of uni and got a tattoo of a koi fish because I thought it was spiritual. I was going through a phase. Don't judge me. He didn't know I'd gone back to study law. Didn't know I'd passed with distinction. Didn't know I'd worked my arse off for years. And he definitely didn't know that, as of 6 months ago, I'd been appointed the youngest judge in our district. But sure, Greg. Tell me more about how I'm a disgrace to the family while wearing a tie you got free with a bottle of Old Spice. You know when someone drops a massive bombshell and the entire room just stops? Like time itself goes. You know what, I'm good. I'm out. And all that's left is the echo of everyone's repressed childhood trauma? Yeah. It was one of those moments. Greg had just declared, with all the dramatic flair of a man who thinks watching Peaky Blinders makes him emotionally deep, that I was a disgrace, a disappointment, and my personal favorite, no longer welcome in his home. Which is hysterical, really, because I've been in his flat once, and that was only because I needed to use the loo during a family walk and McDonald's wouldn't let me in without a purchase. Anyway, there we are. Sat round this disaster of a dinner table, which now feels less like a family meal and more like a hostage situation with better cutlery. Silence. Pure, holy silence. You could hear a pin drop. Or in our case, the slow, defeated exhale of my mother's dying dreams. Mum, bless her, gasped like she'd just seen a ghost or, worse, realized she raised more than one emotionally stunted child. Her hand flew to her pearls, which weren't real, obviously. It's all very MS Sale Bin chic. but she clutched them like the queen herself had handed them over. Dad made that noise. You know the one. That weird throat-clearing, low-pitched grunt dads do when they want to intervene but haven't had a full feeling since 1987. Like he wanted to say something but remembered he hasn't had a meaningful emotion since Only Fools and Horses went off air. And then, and I swear this actually happened, Aunt Linda, now approximately 82% Merlot and 18% spite, leaned over her gravy-soaked roasties and muttered, "Finally." Honestly, iconic. I nearly applauded. Linda has never liked me. Probably because I once corrected her spelling on Facebook and she's never recovered. She treats every family gathering like an episode of Loose Women, except everyone's drunker and slightly racist. So when she whispered that, I knew she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. Probably had a speech prepared. Probably laminated. As for me, I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't throw a roast potato in his smug face, although God knows I was tempted. I just sat there blinking. Calm. Unbothered. Like a cat watching its owner fall down the stairs. Inside, I was somewhere between mildly offended and annoyed my stuffing was going cold. Greg, meanwhile, decided to storm off. Or rather, storm off, in massive sarcastic air quotes, because you can't dramatically leave a dinner table without first navigating past 3 chairs, a radiator, and Uncle Pete's bad knee. So really, he slowly shuffled away with a face like he'd just been cheated on by a Greg's sausage roll. Nobody followed him. Not Mum. Not Dad. Not even his fiancée, who honestly looked like she was reconsidering every life decision that led her to this dinner table in the first place. She just stared at her plate like it might open a portal to another dimension. And me? I turned to Uncle Pete and said, "Could you pass the potatoes? Might as well eat while I'm still allowed at the table. Because if I've learned anything from growing up in this family, it's this. If someone tries to emotionally destroy you during a roast dinner, you finish your meal first. Always. Here's the kicker, yeah? The plot twist. The bit where the camera pans and the dramatic music kicks in, and you realize the villain's been looking in the wrong mirror the whole time. Spoiler alert. I wasn't the disappointment. Greg was just wrong. And I know, a man being confidently, aggressively wrong in public? Shocking. Groundbreaking. Never been done before. See, Greg had no actual clue what I did for work. Not a clue. In his mind, I was still that dropout goth weirdo who listened to My Chemical Romance at full volume and told Nan I was rejecting capitalism when I didn't get a job after 6th form. To be fair, that version of me did exist. For about 2 years. She wore combat boots to Tesco and cried about Sylvia Plath in pub toilets. But she also grew up. Quietly. Inconveniently. Off-screen, so to speak. And Greg? Well, he never got the memo. Because unlike Greg, I don't make announcements every time I do something vaguely adult. I don't post on Facebook with captions like "another step towards greatness" and a blurry photo of an online course certificate from somewhere called Entrepreneurship Hub Elite Pro. I don't hand out business cards at funerals. I just got on with it. What Greg didn't know, because he's too busy being the human embodiment of a Nando's loyalty card that never quite fills up, is that I went back to school. At night. While working a crap job and flat-sharing with a girl who thought crystals could cure meningitis. I studied. I grafted. I smashed law school. Graduated with distinction. Got roped into helping with a few cases, then a few more, and then boom. Somehow, somewhere along the way, someone decided I'd make a decent judge. And just like that, I became one of the youngest judges in the district. Not that anyone in my family noticed. Too busy arguing about whether Countdown was better in the Des Lynam era. Ironic, really. Greg's always whining on about success and legacy and being respected, usually while reposting hustle culture quotes on Instagram, like, "You've got the same 24 hours as Beyoncé," which is rich coming from a man who spent 2 of those hours trying to sell Herbalife to my cousin at a christening. And yet here I am. Apparently the disgrace of the family. Because I've got tattoos. Because I'm not married. Because I once turned up to Christmas wearing trousers and Aunt Linda still brings it up like it was the bloody apocalypse. But sure, Greg. Tell me more about your life. Tell me about your dropshipping business. where you sell silicone garlic peelers from Alibaba and call it entrepreneurship. Tell me about the time you went to one seminar at a Holiday Inn and suddenly started calling yourself a brand. Tell me how your mentor is a man named Brad who lives in Essex and definitely isn't legally allowed to operate a credit card machine. Because if we're talking disappointments, sweetheart, at least mine came with student loans and a full-time salary. Yours came with fake followers and a YouTube channel that hasn't cracked double digits.
But yeah,
I'm the embarrassment, the rebel,
the shame of the family.
Funny how people can hold such strong opinions about your life when they've never actually looked at it. Flash forward a year, and by flash I mean dragged through 12 months of family WhatsApp chaos, passive-aggressive birthday cards, and mom accidentally forwarding me Greg's engagement shoot like I was supposed to weep into my oat milk, and I get an invite to his wedding rehearsal.
Now,
let's be honest. No one invites their estranged sister, who they publicly disowned over Yorkshire PUDs, to a wedding rehearsal. Not unless it's a trap, a clerical error, or a divine test of patience handed down by the universe like, let's see if she can hold it together through one buffet without setting fire to something. And it was clearly accidental. The invite came in an email with 15 other people CC'd, addressed to friends, family, and others. Others. I wasn't even a footnote. I was an administrative afterthought. Naturally, I assumed it was a mistake. I wasn't going to go. I had plans. Specifically, to not be emotionally abused in a beige function room. But then Mum rang. Oh, Mum. She gave me the voice. You know the one, where she sounds like she's been crying but hasn't, and says things like, I just want my children in the same room again before I die, as if she's starring in a BBC drama called Guilt and Gravy. I said, fine, I'll go. But I won't be the drama.
Pause.
And less provoked. Because I'm not a monster, but I'm also not Gandhi. And if someone throws shade, I will respond.
Politely.
Devastatingly. Possibly with a quote from Legally Blonde. So the day arrives. The wedding rehearsal. Held at a venue that can only be described as Pinterest's idea of a barn. You know the type, fake rustic, faux wooden beams. Tiny fairy lights strung up like we're all meant to forget it smells vaguely of fertilizer and old cheese boards. It had country chic energy, which in Britain usually translates to someone watched Escape to the Country and now thinks they're better than little. I turned up 5 minutes late. Not on purpose. I'm not that petty. But I won't pretend I didn't take my time choosing the outfit. Something simple.
Subtle.
Elegant. You know, the kind of thing that whispers, I earn more than your combined salaries and still don't need to show off. And I walked, iced latte in hand, like the ghost of mistakes past. I could feel it, that ripple of tension. That sharp inhale that groups of poshish people do when someone walks in holding emotional baggage and oat milk. One of the bridesmaids literally recoiled like I'd brought cholera. I sipped, smiled, took in the floral arrangements, plastic. The theme, peach and gold, brave. And the vibe, tense, like a funeral if the corpse had opinions. Honestly, it was as tacky as Greg's personality. And that's saying something, because this is a man who once wore a velvet waistcoat to a barbecue and called it bespoke. The rehearsal began. Everyone pretended not to notice me.
But people noticed me.
I was the out-of-place element. The plot twist no one saw coming. The cursed object in the corner of the room you just know will ruin Act 3. And I was having the time of my life. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew what was coming. And let me tell you, if you thought the stuffing incident was awkward, just wait until someone says, Your Honor, I didn't know you'd be here. But that's for the next bit, innit? So there I am, standing in the middle of this knockoff countryside Pinterest fever dream, sipping my iced latte like the bringer of emotional disruption and passive-aggressive family trauma. I'm minding my own business, genuinely, just vibing, absorbing the faint scent of anxiety, cheap Prosecco, and dried eucalyptus. And then she turns. Jessica. With a K. Of course. Jessica. Because normal spelling is clearly for the peasants. She spins round in her stilettos like she's doing amateur ballet for the WI, locks eyes with me, and the color drains from her face so fast I thought she might faint straight into the confetti. Now, bear in mind, last time I saw Jessica, she gave me a smile so tight it could have doubled as a headband, and said something vaguely condescending about how not everyone's cut out for formal education. You know, some people are just more creative.
Right.
Creative. AKA broke.
Disgraced. Failure.
So when she properly clocked me, in my understated but vaguely expensive on-purpose outfit, sipping casually, like I hadn't been publicly booted from the family less than a year ago, her reaction was, well, magical. She curtsied. No, seriously. A full, actual, knees bent, royal meeting curtsy. Like she thought I was there to knight her or send her to prison. Both valid options, honestly. And then, oh, brace yourself, she goes. Your Honor, I didn't know you'd be here. Loud enough for the room to hear. Because of course. Because when panic hits posh girls, volume control exits stage left. The entire rehearsal went deathly silent. Again. But this time, it was delicious. Last time the silence was awkward and pitying. The silence you get when someone's just insulted your life choices over gravy. This time it was the kind of silence that clings to walls. That echoes. That says, oh bloody hell, what have we missed? Greg, bless his little crypto-loving, self-help book-reading heart, just stood there, blinking like someone had smacked him over the head with a dictionary. His jaw actually dropped. I've seen less dramatic reactions in EastEnders. He looked like he was trying to do long division in his head and had suddenly realized he couldn't count past 10 without taking his socks off. I didn't say anything, just raised an eyebrow in the kind of way that says, that's right, love. The disappointment has a job title now, and it outranks yours. It was glorious. Jessica, meanwhile, looked like she'd swallowed a church bell.
Couldn't speak.
Couldn't move. Still half curtsied like she'd short-circuited in the middle of a Tudor reenactment. Her manicured hand, the one with acrylics so sharp they could be used for emergency surgery, was shaking like a chihuahua on Red Bull. And me? I just took another sip of my latte.
Calm.
Serene. Like a judge at a pageant. Or an actual judge, I suppose. Which I am. Did I mention that? Just in case you missed it, I'm a judge now.
Legally.
Officially. Robe and everything. Greg finally stammered. Wait, what? Poor lad. That single brain cell working overtime, trying to assemble a narrative that made sense. Spoiler alert. It doesn't. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. The look on Jessica's face was enough. The bride, now realizing her future sister-in-law could literally sentence her, had turned a shade of beige so pale, even Dulux would call it emotionally compromised cream. The best part? Nobody else knew. Nobody in the room had a clue I'd been quietly climbing the ranks while Greg was busy flogging multi-level marketing protein shakes and posting gym selfies captioned, "Rise and grind flexed biceps." And now his bride was bowing to me. In public. In front of the whole rehearsal party. At the venue, he spent $5,000 booking for the aesthetic.
Peak.
British.
Comedy.
You couldn't write it. Anyway, pass me the canapes. We've still got the ceremony to get through. Right? So you'd think the whole curtsy debacle would have been enough drama for one evening, yeah? You'd think. Surely, this is the climax. This is the bit where the screen fades to black and we all head to the pub to emotionally unpack over a pint and some dodgy scampi fries.
But no.
Because life, bless her twisted little heart, loves a callback. A full circle, karmic slap in the face with a ladle full of poetic justice.
So.
Picture this. I'm standing there, still sipping that latte like it's laced with holy water and petty vengeance, and Jessica with a K is still frozen mid-curtsy, like some Poundland waxwork in a knockoff Madame Tussauds. Everyone else? Staring.
Silent. Confused.
Uncomfortable. It was like someone had paused the rehearsal and lost the remote. And then it hits me. Not dramatically, mind you. Not like in films where there's a flashback montage and dramatic violin music. No, It was more like one of those horrible realizations you have mid-toilet break.
Sudden.
Inconvenient. I was staring at her French tips, so pointy they were practically weapons, when I clocked it. Her face. Her face. I knew her from somewhere. Cue the internal monologue spinning like a knackered washing machine on full spin.
Hang on.
I know that fake tan. I know that exact blend of overplucked anxiety and mascara. Where have I seen this woman sob before? And then it landed. 6 months ago. Courtroom 3B. The defendant sobbing over a multi-pack of stolen Primark knickers and a scented candle from Boots. Shoplifting. Not grand larceny. Not murder. Just your classic, oops, my bag accidentally fell onto the till-free self-checkout while I ran out screaming sort of situation. She was all crocodile tears and tragic monologues about financial hardship, and I just wanted to feel pretty for once, Your Honor. Oscar-worthy stuff. Rada would have signed her on the spot. I even remember her giving it the full sobbing in the dock routine with lashes so long they waved goodbye when she blinked. At the time, I gave her a gentle slap on the wrist. Community service. Light sentence. Compassionate justice and all that jazz. Thought she was just another unlucky girl caught in a rough patch. Turns out, she was just warming up to marry into my family. I didn't recognize her straight away, obviously. Because back then I was wearing my robe, my serious face, and the kind of makeup that screams, don't argue, I'll have you in contempt faster than your last Tinder date ghosted you.
But she remembered me.
Oh, she remembered me. Her eyes were wide, haunted, like someone had just wheeled out the ghost of Tesco's past. That curtsy? Not respect. It was panic. She clocked me, clocked the memory, and did the only thing she knew how to do in a crisis. Act posh and hope for the best. I could see it happening in real time. She was recalculating her life choices like a malfunctioning sat-nav. Rerouting. Rerouting.
Oh no.
Oh no. Greg, of course, was oblivious. Still blinking like a Poundland lava lamp. Completely unaware that his fiancée had once sobbed at my feet in court over a stolen lip gloss and 2 packets of faux lashes she swore were a gift for her nan. Honestly, I nearly laughed. Nearly. But I held it in. Because I'm mature. And also because I didn't want to waste my latte by snorting it out of my nose. Now I had every reason to make a scene. To casually mention the incident. Maybe drop a didn't recognize you without the tears and criminal record love. But I didn't. Because vengeance, when served cold and silent, tastes so much better. So I smiled.
Small.
Polite. The kind of smile that says, I know your secrets, darling, and I'll be keeping them for now. Meanwhile, Jessica looked ready to self-combust into a pile of dry shampoo and broken dreams. And I went to find the bar. Because if I was going to survive the circus, I'd need something stronger than caffeine. Ah, and here it is. The moment. The penny drop. The face crack. The exact point where Greg's tiny little mental filing cabinet bursts into flames and he realizes, shock horror, that his disgrace of a sister is, in fact, Your Honor. Capital Y, capital H, gavel and everything. It was delicious. I swear you could see the cogs grinding in his head like an old printer running on trauma and missed therapy appointments. There he was, stood next to his fiancée, who was still white as a ghost with a mortgage, and he suddenly looks at me like he's just been slapped with a wet flannel soaked in consequences. Wait. Hang on a minute. You're the judge? Bless him. You could almost hear the Windows error sound in his skull. Dun. System failure. Reboot required. Honestly, the effort it took him to connect those dots was almost inspiring. Like watching a toddler try to plug in a USB stick upside down 50 times and still miss. I didn't say a word.
Just sipped my latte. Slowly.
Like I was the main character in a courtroom drama no one asked for, but everyone's secretly obsessed with. Imagine me. One eyebrow raised, pinky finger delicately extended like I'm sipping judgment instead of oat milk. Meanwhile, Greg's standing there looking like someone just told him Love Island isn't real. I could see the existential crisis forming behind his eyes. All that smug superiority. All those "you'll never amount to anything" speeches he'd pre-written in the shower, poof. Up in smoke. Like his crypto investments. But you dropped out? Didn't you get sacked from Weatherspoons? You failed home economics. Yes, Gregory. All technically true. And yet here I am. In heels. With judicial power. And you're the one with a pyramid scheme and a fiancé who curtsied out of fear. Life's funny like that. And I know I should have felt a bit sorry for him. Maybe a flicker of empathy. A crumb of sibling compassion. But instead I felt triumphant. Not proud. Not even smug. Just serenely superior. Like karma had popped in wearing a trench coat and whispered, "You rang?" He didn't speak for a solid 2 minutes. Which, by Greg's standards, is a full-blown stroke. I watched the whole thing unfold in glorious, slow-motion awkwardness. Aunt Linda offered him a mint like that would help. His fiancée, Jessica with AK, still clutching her handbag like it might shield her from divine judgment, refused to make eye contact with anyone. And me? I just stood there.
Calm. Composed.
Unbothered. Serving silent retribution in a Zara blazer and a smirk that said, "You done messed up, son." To be fair, Greg took it better than I expected.
He didn't cry.
He didn't scream. He just sort of sat down.
Slowly.
Like someone whose soul had just left their body to go live in a travelodge. I almost expected him to ask me for legal advice then and there. Oi, sis, hypothetically, how bad is tax fraud? But instead, he stared at his shoes like they'd betrayed him and muttered something about needing air. And I let him have it. Because the air outside? Full of consequences. And I'd rather enjoy mine from the inside, with whipped cream and quiet, gleeful revenge. Right? So imagine this. I'm standing there, minding my own business, looking like the living embodiment of calm, collected pettiness, when the wheels start coming off the clown car that is Greg's life. Jessica, with AK, grabs him by the elbow so fast I thought she might dislocate it. Like a woman possessed. Or, more accurately, like a woman who's just realized she's engaged to a man whose sister can legally sentence her. They scuttle off to the corner like a pair of Sims glitching out during a fire. And then it begins. The whisper screaming. You know the one. That tone of voice that's technically not yelling but is somehow louder than a foghorn. All his syllables and wild hand gestures. Like two middle managers fighting over a shared spreadsheet. Greg's doing that red-in-the-face thing he used to do as a child when he was caught lying about who ate the last penguin bar. Jessica's pointing at me like I'm a Ouija board that just spelled doom. And me? I'm still sipping my iced latte, now slightly melted, much like Greg's dignity. Meanwhile, Mum lets out one of her classic, "I'll just cough instead of scream" coughs. This one had weight to it. Decades of disappointment. 1,000 unsent WhatsApps. All compressed into one passive-aggressive, throat-clear. Honestly, surprised it didn't register on the Richter scale. And then there's the pastor.
Poor sod.
Some mid-50s man who clearly only signed up to officiate nice little countryside weddings with bunting and Victoria sponge, not front-row seats to a family implosion. He starts shuffling his papers in that panicked way people do when they wish they were somewhere anywhere else. The man looked like he was considering a career change on the spot. I half expected him to hold up a Bible and shout "plot twist," like it was a pantomime. No one's really looking at me, but everyone is painfully aware of my existence. It's that very British, very polite kind of tension where nobody's saying anything directly, but everything is being said through tiny glances and micro-expressions. The art of silent judgment. A national sport, really. I blinked. Innocently. Like a Victorian ghost. Because technically, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't publicly revealing any court records. I was just standing there, being present, with my judgy little aura and my iced beverage and my very inconvenient truth. And that, my friends, is how you become the drama without ever actually being the drama. It's not a skill. It's a lifestyle.
Greg started pacing.
Jessica started crying. Again, Mum muttered something about needing to sit down. Aunt Linda popped a Murray mint like she was watching EastEnders live. Someone's Nan asked if this was part of the rehearsal. And I stood in the eye of the hurricane. Serene. Blameless. A human version of that dog meme in the burning house going, "This is fine."
Because really it was.
Next bit? The wedding itself. Spoiler. It gets worse. Obviously. At some point, even I knew it was time to leave. Like a rat off a sinking ship, but more glam, and with better coffee. Because let's be honest, the air in that church hall was thicker than Aunt Brenda's gravy and twice as emotionally lumpy. Jessica with a K was tear-streaked and furious. Greg had gone a lovely shade of puce, and the tension? You could have carved it with a butter knife from Poundland. So I made the very British decision to leave politely, quietly, and with deep, unrelenting passive aggression. I didn't storm out. Oh no. That would have been dramatic, and remember, I wasn't the drama. I simply floated towards the exit like an angel of judgment, grabbing a wedding cake sample off the dessert table as I passed. It was lemon drizzle. Mediocre, if I'm honest. Bit dry. Much like Greg's personality. On the way out, I stopped to thank the wedding planner, a woman so tightly wound she looked like she hadn't blinked since 2004. I leaned in, whispered, "You've got lipstick on your teeth." She blinked. "Oh God, really?" "No," I said, sipping the last of my latte, "but your bride's an absolute horror, and I thought you deserved a moment." To her credit, she cackled. Proper, full-body laugh. Probably the most joy she'd felt in months. Poor soul. And then my exit music. Just as I stepped outside, heels clicking dramatically on the gravel like I was in some BBC crime drama, Greg absolutely bellowed from inside. Why didn't anyone tell me she was a judge? Oh, Greg. Sweet, confused Greg. Still shouting like it's everyone else's fault, his brain's made of Weetabix and regret. That line. That glorious, glorious line. It echoed behind me like the dramatic climax of a tragicomedy. I nearly turned back just to curtsy, but I was on a roll. Iconic doesn't begin to cover it. Also, I took the catering menu. Not out of spite. Just curiosity. And okay, maybe a little spite. They were charging £18 a head for beige food and calling it rustic elegance. I had questions. And receipts. As I walked back to my car, heels in one hand, menu in the other, I felt lighter. Not quite free. Not quite healed. But smug. Deeply, soul-warmingly smug. And honestly, sometimes that's all the closure you get. Cue the imaginary end credits. Directed by Emotional Damage. Costume design by Generational Trauma. Special thanks to Jessica with a K for the plot twist, and Greg for being exactly who I always knew he was. Roll credits. I'm off for a chippy tea.
So.
Shockingly, devastatingly, really, I wasn't invited to the actual wedding. I know. Try to contain your grief. Me, the sibling who brought nothing but class, chaos, and lemon drizzle cake critique to the rehearsal, uninvited? I was gutted. Absolutely inconsolable for a solid 3.5 seconds. But don't worry. The universe, in all its passive-aggressive brilliance, had plans. Because, brace yourself, 6 months later, the newlyweds were divorced. Apparently, trust issues cropped up. Something to do with how Jessica with a K forgot to mention her criminal record. I know. An easy thing to slip your mind in between choosing napkin colors and pretending to like your in-laws. And Greg? Well, Greg was staggered. Apparently shouting, "Why didn't you tell me you'd been arrested? Babe." Over a meat-free roast is not considered healthy conflict resolution in a marriage. Tragic. Meanwhile, I got promoted. Bought a little house. Nothing flashy, but it's mine. 3 bedrooms, 1 soul, no Greg. I started a podcast, bench talk, bit of legal chat, bit of ranting about why people think freedom of speech means they can scream in Tesco. It's niche, but weirdly popular with middle-aged women who own rescue dogs and hate their husbands. I feel seen. But of course, I'm still the family disappointment. Still the one who went off the rails. Still didn't follow the family path, which, if memory serves, involves soul-crushing admin jobs, deeply unhappy marriages, and pretending not to cry when your Tesco club card points aren't enough for petrol. Mum still does that thing where she pats my hand and says, "You're doing so well for you." As though I'm a rescue hamster who somehow learned to tap dance. And Greg? Oh, Greg. Greg now sells essential oils on Facebook, lives in a two-bed flat above a vape shop, and keeps posting inspirational quotes like, "If you don't build your dream, someone will hire you to build theirs." Which is rich, considering he once got fired from Costa for excessive frothing. But sure, I'm the disappointment. Because nothing says success like calling yourself a wellness entrepreneur while flogging lavender oil to your old GCSE mates. Honestly, if life were a sitcom, this would be the part where the credits roll and I just stare into the camera,
Deadpan.
holding a glass of red. But this isn't telly. It's real life. And in real life, sometimes the petty wins are the happy ending. And sometimes the biggest glow-up is simply not turning out like Greg.
Cheers to that.